tell you about messing up my man cave? How many times I have to teach you? God, this thing is filthy! Don't let it happen again. Stupid, dirty rug. Man cave meeting in order. CPU explanation. Okay, if you're deciding to build a computer and you go out there and you look online and you look at the different processors, you're going to find there's lots and lots and lots of them. Well, when I built my computer, the first one I built, I wanted to know the same thing. What is all this explanation stuff that I see under these chips? Why is one processor better than another one? What makes it better? What does all this stuff mean in the description? Well, I'm going to explain that to you today. I just printed off a copy from a Newegg, a site, and the reason I picked this one is it's got all the features that you can think of that can be explained about a processor. It's an Intel Core i5 4690K, Haswell quad-core 3.5 GHz LGA 1150 desktop processor. Okay, in the description it says, of course, the brand is Intel, and the processor type is desktop. That's for a desktop computer. The series is Core i5. Now, I wondered the same thing. I thought forever that the I in that stood for Intel, but it does not. Surprisingly, I thought it did, but I looked up the explanation and it actually stands for Itanium. So the 5, it has to do with marketing. I don't understand that, but they don't even have an explanation for it. It's just a marketing thing. So that's pretty much meaningless. The socket type is LGA 1150. Now this is important. If you're going to get an 1150 socket processor, you have to have an 1150 socket compatible motherboard. If you don't, you take a chance on really messing up your processor or your motherboard, and or both. So if it says 1150, you need 1150 socket board. 1150 socket chip will not fit an 1155 socket board. Just remember that when you go to buy this chip. And the core name is Haswell. Now, I wondered about that. I always wonder, just out of curiosity. I mean, it's not a big deal, but I did a little bit of research and found out where they came up with the name. It was an engineer that works for Intel that came up with this name. He was messing around on his laptop one day. I think he lives in Oregon. And he found a small town named Haswell, Colorado. And he said it was easy to spell, simple. He thought it was a catchy name, and they didn't have a problem with getting it approved. It's a small town in Colorado with a population of 68. So there you go. They're on the map now. But anyway, let's go further. The next thing it says is it's quad core. You may ask, what does that mean? You see that it's more expensive when you see a quad core than you do a dual core. And it's more expensive when you see a 6-core than a 4-core. So what does the cores mean? I'll explain that to you. It's kind of like having 4 processors combined into one chip. In other words, each processor runs at the same speed on that chip. On this one, for instance, it'd be 3.5 megahertz, and they're all four performing separate operations at the same time, which speeds up the process, as you can imagine. It's kind of like if you went to a restaurant, like a fast food place, and there was only one core, in other words, one person. You would have to take the order, you would have to cook the hamburger, cook the fries, pour the soft drink, and bring it to the counter. Well, that's not a very fast process. Well, the 4-core, what it does is it's like you had 3 other people helping you. One person would be making the hamburger, one person would be making the fries, and one person would be pouring the soft drink. And then once it's all put together and brought to the counter, that makes the process go a lot faster. So that's what quad-core processor does. It could be running your software in the background, like your video editing stuff in the background, your antivirus in the background. All these different functions can be running in the background while you're watching a movie and downloading something off the internet. So you can have all these processes going on at one time. But usually you're only going to have 2 cores that really work a lot. You don't see a lot of beneficial things with the quad core until you're doing a lot of multitasking things, like for instance, gaming is one thing that would be where a quad core would come in a lot. It would work for you a lot better. But let's move on. Okay, we're going to go to the cache on it. This says it has 6 megabytes of L3 cache. You may ask, what's L3 cache? Well, you have an L1 cache. They're usually very small but very, very fast. You have L2 cache that's not quite as fast, and then you have the L3 cache. Well, L1 and L2 pull information from L3. It's kind of like memory built on the chip that's a faster memory. And it's kind of like if you were at the library and you were at the counter, and let's say you sold a book or checked out a book every day, the same book constantly over and over again. Well, instead of going back to the shelf and having to look for that book each time, you'd be better off putting a stack of like 10 of them right there on the counter, so whenever somebody came in to check out that certain book, you had it readily available for them. Now the L2 cache would be like if you had, let's say, a counter underneath, a shelf underneath your counter, and you didn't have that book on the counter itself, then you could reach underneath the counter to the shelf below and get that book. Now L3 cache would be like you had a big bookshelf behind the counter, and if you couldn't find it in the stack of books on the counter or under the counter on the shelf, then you go back to this bigger shelf and get the book. And that's how cache works. It has stuff that the memory is, the RAM memory, the DRAM memory is a lot slower than the cache memory. The cache memory is readily available stuff. It's stuff that you do every single time you turn your computer on, that it knows you're going to do, and it's readily available for you. That's the explanation for cache. Okay, that leads us to the name of the chip is 4690K. Well, the 4690 is just the model number of the chip. It doesn't have anything to do with how the processor operates. It's just like a model number for it. But the K is important. The K indicates whether the processor is locked for overclocking or not. In other words, you can't speed the processor up if it doesn't have a K on it. If it has a K on it, that means that it's unlocked, and then you can overclock that processor. In other words, you can speed it up and make changes to it to make it run faster than it's designed to run. Now, if it doesn't have the K, then you can do that, but it's not wise to do that. I'll just put it that way. it has a locked multiplier on it. In other words, you cannot overclock this processor. You're not supposed to, or you're taking chances when you do. That's what the K stands for. And this is something, the reason I chose the Intel instead of the AMD is because Intel does have a hyper-threading technology. And hyper-threading technology is useful in some aspects, in some ways it's useful, in some ways it's really not. But most of the time, if you hear about people that are going to want hyper-threading on a processor, it's going to be for like video rendering, video editing, video processing and all that, because it comes in handy there. And I'll explain what hyper-threading is. It's really, you could probably rename it, instead of hyper-threading, you call it staging. What it actually does is, like if you had, let's take the restaurant, let's go back to the restaurant deal. Let's say that your restaurant only sold fries and nothing else. In other words, the only thing that a customer could buy or purchase in your store is going to be an order of fries and nothing else. Well, you know that already. So the customer that you're waiting on, you already have the fries sitting right there at the counter ready for them. And as soon as they pay you, you hand them an order of fries, and you say next, and you hand the next customer an order of fries, then you say next. In other words, you know what each customer is going to want as they come to the counter. And that's why video editing is handy. Uses the hyper-threading in a really good way, because what it does is it has that frame that's going to be processed, and it knows there's a frame right behind that needs to be processed. So it's already staged and ready to go. As you're processing one frame, the next frame is ready to be processed. And that's hyper-threading. And that is just about everything I can tell you about processors and what all these things mean when you go and you look at it online and you say, well, what's best for me? And this will give you an idea as to what you're going to be looking for when you go to pick what processor that you're going to choose to build your computer. Hope this helps you, and hope you watch more of my videos. And if you have any questions or any comments, feel free to leave them, and please subscribe to my channel. It's the Man Cave.